Travis Walton is a man who simply vanished without a trace in 1975, and it is one of the most well-documented UFO cases in history. So here's what happened to Travis Walton. Travis was born in 1946 and grew up in a small town called Snowflake, Arizona. He had an older brother named Alan, who worked as a logger just like their father. And when Travis was just 21 years old, he enlisted in the Air Force and became a jet mechanic. But just 2 years later, Travis left the military and returned to his hometown where he got married. And shortly after, he started working as a logger, just like his dad and brother. On November 5th, 1975, Travis was working with his brother Alan and several other men who were cutting down trees near the town of Heber, Arizona. And this was just a normal day at work. There was nothing unusual about it whatsoever. Then, at around 10 a.m., Alan was chopping down a tree when he heard a loud crash and looked over to see Travis standing next to a large gash in the trunk of a tree that had been split clean in half. But what was strange was that neither Alan nor Travis had actually hit that tree, and there was no wind or any other reasonable explanation for how that tree had been split in half. So they all stopped working and decided to investigate. But before they could do anything, a white light suddenly appeared behind the men, and they all turned to look at it. When they saw a blue and silver flying object floating towards them, and it looked like a giant disc about 50 feet in diameter, and the object was getting closer and closer. So the men ran to their truck and jumped inside, and as they watched, the object landed just 150 feet from where they were. So they decided to go check it out, and as they approached the object, they noticed scorch marks on the ground and several large round discs that looked like manhole covers. Then out of nowhere, a beam of bright white light shot up into the sky, and the men immediately ran away from the object. And even though they were more than 200 yards away from the strange craft, the light was so bright that they couldn't see a thing. They all hid behind some trees and waited until the light went away. Then they returned to the object to find something very strange. The object had vanished. It was no longer there, and they searched all around the area, but they couldn't find any signs of where it had come from or where it had gone. And all they had to show for their experience were the strange markings on the ground and the fact that one of their buddies was missing. You see, while they were running away from the bright light, they had lost track of Travis. They couldn't find him anywhere, and they searched for him for hours, but he was nowhere to be found. And they were starting to get really worried, because he could have easily been injured or even killed by that bright light. And then Alan spotted something. He found Travis's hat about 100 yards from the object, and not far from the hat, they found Travis's glasses lying on the ground, and both of those items had been completely undamaged. But they still had no sign of Travis. So they reported their friend missing and contacted the local police. But even though they gave the police a detailed description of the object and what had happened to Travis, the police didn't believe them. You see, back in 1975, UFOs weren't exactly a hot topic. They were considered pretty much a joke and nobody took them seriously. So the police thought that the boys were just having some fun and making up a story, and they refused to take the reports seriously. So the family decided to hire a private investigator named Kay Lawson, who thankfully took them seriously. And he began searching for clues, which led him to a local rancher who had seen a similar object in the sky several weeks earlier. And he also mentioned that people had seen strange lights in the sky in the days following Travis's disappearance. And all of these strange sightings seemed to be connected to Travis's disappearance. Then investigators found another witness who said he saw a flying object land in the area and a man exit the craft. And when he looked at the man, he realized it was Travis. The witness said he had only seen Travis for a brief moment, but he was absolutely sure it was him. And he said the Travis he saw wasn't walking on foot. He was being carried by a creature that looked like a human, but had green skin. So investigators returned to the crash site and began searching for footprints, but they couldn't find any. But they did find something else. A single strand of hair that didn't match any of the men who had been logging. And even though the police refused to help, the family continued to search for Travis. Every single day, dozens of volunteers would join the search party, and they would comb through the desert looking for any sign of Travis. But after 3 months of searching, they still hadn't found anything. So eventually, everyone gave up hope that Travis was still alive. But there was a twist in the story. You see, Kay Lawson, the private investigator, never gave up on the case. He remained convinced that Travis was still alive somewhere. And to this day, no one knows why he believed that. Maybe he just didn't want to admit that the case was a dead end. Or maybe he genuinely believed that Travis was still out there somewhere. Whatever the reason, He never gave up, and 7 years later, he was finally rewarded for his persistence. In 1982, a woman named Vicky Wilson was driving through the desert when she saw something strange in the distance. It looked like a pile of rocks, but it was moving. She pulled over and walked over to get a closer look and realized it was a man's body. She quickly called the police, who arrived soon after and identified the body as Travis Walton. And even though he had been missing for 7 years, his body showed no signs of decomposition. He was literally in perfect condition. It was like he had been mummified. And even though his body was found 7 years after he disappeared, there were no signs of foul play. He had no injuries, and there was nothing to suggest that he had been murdered. It was almost as if he had just vanished into thin air. And when they examined the body, they found something else that was even stranger. Travis's clothes and hair contained a large amount of radioactivity, and that suggested that whatever had happened to him, it had involved some kind of nuclear energy. To this day, no one knows exactly what happened to Travis, but there are a few theories. Some people believe that he was abducted by aliens, while others believe that he was the victim of a secret government experiment. And still others believe that he simply wandered off into the desert and got lost, and his body was just now being found. But there are a few things that we do know. For one, Travis's abduction was witnessed by multiple people. His brother Alan and several of their friends all saw the object land, and they all saw Travis disappear. And while it's possible that they were lying, it's also possible that they were just trying to tell the truth. Secondly, there are too many witnesses who claim to have seen Travis after he disappeared. If his brother and friends were lying, then so were the other witnesses. And there is just no way that Travis could have fooled all of these people into believing he was still alive. And finally, the fact that Travis's body showed no signs of decomposition suggests that he was either frozen or mummified, which rules out the theory that he just wandered off into the desert and died. So what do you think really happened to Travis? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, make sure to subscribe. And if you want to watch another video just like this one, then click right over here.